I wanted to summarise the approach that we've been discussing for developing personas. So initially we're going to go out and do some contextual inquiry. We're going to understand our users, our environments, our goals, and we're going to feed those into some kind of analysis machine which will generate the behavioural variables, such as the knowledge of technology that we talked about earlier, such as the knowledge of hiking and walking, which is the one we used in our case study. And out pop our personas. Now, I haven't come across one of these machines yet that actually work. Most of the analysis needs to be done yourself. But earlier I talked about these 2 dimensions for our hiking app that we were developing. In practice, I find that the dimensions that come out of contextual inquiry vary. So it's rare that you end up with the same dimensions across different studies. And this slide shows some of the kind of dimensions that I've seen come across in different studies that I've looked at. Now, the fact is, in real research, it's multi-dimensional. You don't get these 2. It's rare that you just have 2 dimensions. If you do have 2 dimensions, it's great because you get the 4 personas that kind of pop out if people populate each of the cells. In practice, it tends to be multi-dimensional. So what I wanted to do now was go through another case study, but this one's a bit more realistic. This particular case study will look at multi-dimensions and how you handle that in your analysis process. So to do that, let's set up another particular case study. For this particular one, let's imagine that we've carried out some persona interviews for a company that sells upmarket stationery. Incidentally, this particular firm that I've got the screenshot from here, David Cameron's wife works for. So the UK Prime Minister's wife works for this company, and indeed they produce upmarket stationery. You couldn't make it up, could you really? So we're going to interview 6 people, and let's assume that we do our interviews and a number of characteristics emerge, like personal business purchase, bargain basement luxury, and so on. And what we'll do now is we'll map our research participants to these key characteristics. What we're going to do is we're going to populate this table with our interviewees. So for example, you can see that Craig, Sally and Phil, they tend to buy stationery as a personal purchase, while Emily, Sam and Jane, well, they tend to buy stationery as a business purchase. And now let's populate the rest of the table. And what we're looking for is patterns in this table. Which interviewees tend to cluster together? Well, it looks like Sally and Phil share many of the same characteristics. Sally and Phil buy stationery as a personal purchase. They tend towards the luxury end, especially Sally. They're brand loyal, time poor. They purchase stationery frequently. They're technology novices. They're highbrow. They use the internet for purchases rarely, and they're browse dominant. And it looks like Sam and Jane share many characteristics too. They're pretty much the opposite of Sally and Phil. Notice that Emily and Craig have the odd thing in common, like they tend towards the time-rich end of the scale, but you couldn't really say they've much else in common. So they're not a persona. And in fact, if I was doing this kind of work, I would then look at this and say, well, actually, we obviously need to go out and do some more observations because we've got Emily and Craig who are just sitting on their own at the moment. Surely there are some other people out there. We've not reached the point of least astonishment yet, as you'd expect, given that we've only got 6 people on this table. The reason for having 6, by the way, is just to make this table easier to understand. If I'd put 21 on here, it will become impossible for you to follow. But the point is, what we would do next is then use these data to create personas. So we combine Sally and Phil into one of our personas, number 1, the red circles, and Sam and Jane into another, number 2, the green circles here. Now, we can then create specific personas based on those psychographic characteristics. Now, obviously, we need to do this with more dimensions and with more interviewees, but I hope now you get the idea of how to do this kind of analysis.